A lot of people may wonder why save the reef. Well, the reef brings $6 billion annually into the Australian economy and provides 67,000 jobs. There are also 1.9 million visitations to the reef a year, because it is one of the most diverse and biologically complex ecosystems in the entire world. 10% of the world fish species can be found in the Great Barrier Reef, and it covers 350,000 square kilometers, which is home to 23,900 coral reefs, 1,500 fish species, 30 species of whales and dolphins, and 133 species of sharks and rays.
The Great Barrier Reef is located off the coast of Queensland in northeastern Australia. It is the largest living thing on Earth and even visible from outer space. To put it into perspective, it's roughly as big as 70 million football fields and has roughly the same area as countries such as Italy, Japan, and Germany. The 2,300-kilometer-long ecosystem comprises thousands of reefs and hundreds of islands made up of over 600 types of hard and soft coral. It's home to as many as 1,625 species of fish and 133 varieties of sharks and rays.
Some current existing threats to the Great Barrier Reef include climate change, pollution, fishing, and industrialization. The biggest threat to the Great Barrier Reef right now is climate change. As a quote from the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park states, "Climate change remains the most serious threat to the Great Barrier Reef. It is already affecting the reef and is likely to have far-reaching consequences in the decades to come." The increase in ocean temperature caused by climate change is resulting in coral bleaching as well as ocean acidification. Another threat to the reef is pollution. This pollution is caused from sediment, nutrient, and pesticide pollution, which is from runoff, and it's having a huge impact on the health and resilience of the Great Barrier Reef ecosystem. The amount of sediment going into the marine park has quadrupled in the past 150 years, which is attributed to the loss of native vegetation and wetlands. Another threat to the Great Barrier Reef is fishing. There's a lot of high fishing pressure in the area, as well as trawling for prawns, which is an outdated fishing practice. It is allowed in over 1/3 of the marine park, which results in a lot of bycatch and a lot of damage to the seafloor, plants, and animals. The last existing threat to the Great Barrier Reef is industrialization. This includes dredging and dumping of millions of tons of seabed and rock. The government is currently considering the world's biggest coal port at Abbott Point, which is only 50 kilometers from Whitsunday Islands, which is not too far at all from the Great Barrier Reef, and it would impact the ecosystem of the Great Barrier Reef tremendously.
Because the Great Barrier Reef is the world's largest coral reef system, it contains more than 400 types of coral and over 1,500 species of fish. If we let this great ecosystem continue to deteriorate, many species of aquatic life will die out because they can't survive without this remarkable living ecosystem. Coral bleaching is predicted to occur annually by mid-century, and because coral takes 10 years to recover and cannot do so with annual bleaching, scientists expect opportunistic and non-nourishing algae to take over the Great Barrier Reef by 2050. Even though coral reefs occupy less than 0.1% of the world's ocean surface, they provide homes for around a quarter of all marine species, which makes it an important ecosystem to preserve.
Long-term effects of the damage to the Great Barrier Reef include climate change, which would lead to the increase of water temperatures, unusual weather patterns, and tropical storms. Sediments, nutrients, and pesticide pollution from catchment runoff. Nutrients load have also increased, encouraging algal bloom, which in turn provides food for larvae of devastating crown-of-thorns starfish. Speaking of the crown-of-thorns starfish, it gains sustenance from feasting on the polyps of corpses, releasing neurotoxins to absorb the tissue of the coral and quite literally sucking the life out of the reef's backbone, which will lead to further damage. Outdated fishing also has contributed to problems, such as trolling pond, are permitted in over 1/3 of the marine park, resulting in untargeted fish capture, or bycatch, and damage to the seafloor and its resident plants and animals. The combination of all these things have resulted in the overall death of this ecosystem and loss of the diversity of many species.
The most important thing to remember when thinking about the Great Barrier Reef is that this is not an event that has already happened. It is something that is currently going on and therefore can still be stopped. Now, there are many methods of relief that are currently being attempted because it is not too late to save the reef. One of these plans is the Reef 2050 plan, which states in its vision that it will ensure the Great Barrier Reef to continue and improve on its outstanding universal value every decade between now and 2015 to be a natural wonder for each successive generation to come. Farmers around the area are trying to use less pesticides and herbicides so that it decreases the amount of runoff going into the reef. Also, many people are trying to lower their CO2 emissions and just be more environmentally friendly overall, because these are things that are in turn going to later on affect the reef, and these small daily life changes can help to save the reef. The Australian government has put out many videos explaining the effects of the climate change and the pollution going into the Great Barrier Reef so that people can have a more realistic outlook on what is happening, and they can identify with the situation a lot more than just hearing what's happening. An example of one of these videos is Hermie the hermit crab, which talks about ocean acidification, which I will show a clip of that right now.
Meet Hermie. Hermie is a little hermit crab with a big problem. Ocean acidification is threatening Hermie's home. 1/3 of the carbon dioxide pollution created by humans on the land is ending up in the ocean, making it more acidic and making shells and corals weak and brittle. Our actions today will shape the oceans of tomorrow.
So the reason why these videos are so important is it gives people an idea of what's going on, and it also gives them a place to go for more information, and it lets them be more conscious of what they're doing and how what they're doing is affecting the environment and in turn the Great Barrier Reef. A lot of other places are also taking donations and things of that sort, or volunteer work to help, clean up the reef. In turn, many different methods are being used to help the reef. There's media coverage, there's education, there's hands-on trying to change habits. So if all of these things together, along with the government legislation, are actively put to work, it is possible to save the reef.
Some evidence of the disaster is, within the last 27 years, 50.7% of coral in the Great Barrier Reef has died. Some causes are crown of thorns starfish outbreaks, tropical cyclones, and coral bleaching from human activity. Coral reefs thrive in waters with low concentrations of nutrients, like nitrogen and phosphorus and sediments. Unfortunately, the amount of sediment flowing into the reef has quadrupled over the past 150 years, as well as an increased amount of pollutions containing phosphorus has led to the reef's deterioration.